What happens when a man who has everything decides to walk among those who have nothing? What happens when power, wealth, and influence are stripped away, and all that remains is the raw, unfiltered truth of human connection? This is a story about a billionaire who chose to step into the shoes of the ordinary, to see the world through the eyes of a struggling father. It's a story about hope, resilience, and the unexpected twists that life throws at us. But most importantly, it's a story about how one small act of kindness can change lives forever. Elliot Harper was not your typical billionaire. At 52, he had built an empire from scratch, starting with a small tech repair shop in his garage and turning it into a global conglomerate. His company, Harper Innovations, was a household name, known for cutting-edge technology and life-changing products. But success had come at a cost. Elliot had spent decades climbing the ladder, sacrificing time with family, friendships, and even his own sense of self. He lived in a penthouse that overlooked the city, a sprawling space filled with expensive art, rare books, and the latest gadgets. But the walls felt cold, and the silence was deafening. Elliot had everything money could buy: luxury cars, private jets, and a team of people who catered to his every need. Yet, he felt empty. One evening, as he sat alone in his living room, flipping through channels on the massive flat-screen TV, he stumbled upon a documentary. It was about struggling families in the city, people who worked tirelessly just to put food on the table. The stories were heartbreaking: parents working multiple jobs, children going to bed hungry, and dreams deferred because of circumstances beyond their control. One story in particular caught Elliot's attention. It was about a single father named Marcus Reed, who had lost his job at a factory and was now trying to make ends meet by running a lemonade stand with his young son, Noah. The camera zoomed in on Marcus's face, his tired eyes, the lines of worry etched into his forehead, and the faint smile he forced whenever Noah looked up at him. Noah, a bright-eyed boy with a mop of curly hair, was the spitting image of his father. He stood proudly behind the lemonade stand, handing out cups to anyone who stopped by. The stand itself was modest: a folding table, a handmade sign that read Reed's Lemonade, $1 a cup, and a pitcher of lemonade that Marcus made fresh every morning. Elliot couldn't look away. There was something about Marcus's determination and Noah's innocence that struck a chord deep within him. He thought about his own life, the meetings, the deals, the endless pursuit of more. And he realized that for all his wealth, he had never truly understood what it meant to struggle, to fight for survival, to pour your heart into something as simple as a cup of lemonade. That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. The image of Marcus and Noah stayed with him, haunting his thoughts. He knew he could write a check, donate to a charity, or even send someone from his company to help them. But that didn't feel right. Elliot didn't want to throw money at the problem. He wanted to understand. He wanted to feel. And so, he made a decision that would change his life forever. The next morning, Elliot woke up early. He stood in front of his closet, staring at rows of tailored suits, designer shirts, and polished shoes. For the first time in years, he reached for something simple: a plaid shirt, a pair of jeans, and worn-out sneakers. He left his Rolex on the dresser and slipped on a plain wristwatch instead. He called his driver and told him to take the day off. Instead, he walked to the nearest bus stop, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been decades since he had ridden a bus, and the experience was both humbling and eye-opening. He sat next to a young man who was scrolling through job listings on his phone, a mother juggling groceries and a crying toddler, and an elderly man who smiled warmly at him. When the bus reached his stop, Elliot stepped off and took a deep breath. The neighborhood was a stark contrast to the gleaming skyscrapers he was used to. The streets were lined with modest homes, some with peeling paint and overgrown lawns. Kids played on the sidewalks, their laughter filling the air. As he walked, he noticed a small crowd gathered around a lemonade stand. There it was, the same stand he had seen on the documentary. The handmade sign, the chipped table, and the pitcher of lemonade. And there was Noah, his face lighting up as he handed a cup to a customer. Elliot's heart swelled with emotion. He approached the stand, his hands trembling slightly. "1 lemonade, please," he said, handing over $1. Marcus, a man in his late 30s with calloused hands and a gentle demeanor, poured the lemonade with care. "Here you go, sir. Hope you like it," he said, his voice warm but tinged with exhaustion. Elliot took a sip. The lemonade was tangy and sweet, perfectly balanced. But it wasn't the flavor that made it special. It was the love and effort that had gone into making it. He could taste the freshness of the lemons, the hint of sugar, and the care that Marcus had poured into every drop. "This is the best lemonade I've ever had," Elliot said, his voice sincere. Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." Elliot lingered for a moment, watching as Marcus interacted with customers. He noticed the way Marcus's hands shook slightly as he poured the lemonade, the way he glanced at Noah with a mixture of pride and worry. And he noticed the way Noah looked up at his father, his eyes filled with admiration and love. As Elliot walked away, he knew he had made the right decision. This was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Elliot became a regular at the lemonade stand. He introduced himself as Eli, a retired teacher who had some free time. Marcus, who was usually reserved, began to open up. The two men would talk while Noah played nearby, their conversations flowing easily despite their vastly different lives. Marcus shared his story, how he had worked at a factory for over a decade, only to be laid off when the company downsized. He spoke about the countless job applications he had sent out, the rejections that piled up, and the sleepless nights spent worrying about how to provide for Noah. "I just want to give him a good life," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "He's such a smart kid. He deserves so much more than this." Elliot listened intently, his heart breaking a little more with each word. He admired Marcus's resilience, his determination to keep going even when the odds were stacked against him. Noah, a bright and curious 8-year-old, quickly took a liking to Elliot. He would excitedly tell him about school, his favorite books, and his dream of becoming a scientist. "I want to invent something that helps people," Noah said one afternoon, his eyes shining with excitement. "Like a machine that turns trash into food or a robot that can build houses for free." Elliot smiled, ruffling Noah's hair. "That's a wonderful dream, Noah. I bet you'll do great things one day." As the days went by, Elliot found himself looking forward to his visits to the lemonade stand. It wasn't just the lemonade, it was the sense of connection, the feeling of being part of something real. For the first time in years, he felt alive. One afternoon, as Elliot was helping Marcus set up the stand, a man in a suit approached them. He introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, a representative from the city. "I'm sorry, but you can't operate this stand here," Mr. Thompson said, holding up a notice. "You don't have the proper permits." Marcus's face fell. "But this is all we have," he pleaded. "Please, just give us a few more days." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "I'm sorry, but rules are rules. If you don't shut down the stand, we'll have to take further action." Elliot felt a surge of anger. He knew he could use his influence to fix the situation, but he didn't want to reveal his true identity, not yet. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Is there a way to get the permits quickly?" Elliot asked. Mr. Thompson hesitated. "Well, there's an expedited process, but it's expensive. It would cost at least $500. Marcus's shoulders slumped. "I don't have that kind of money." Elliot didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it." Marcus looked at him, stunned. "Eli, you don't have to do that." Elliot placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Let me help. It's the least I can do." The next day, Elliot accompanied Marcus to the city office to apply for the permits. As they filled out the paperwork, Elliot couldn't help but notice the way Marcus's hands trembled, the way he kept glancing at Noah, who was sitting quietly in the corner, coloring in a notebook. When the permits were finally approved, Marcus turned to Elliot, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Eli. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Elliot smiled. "You don't have to. Just keep doing what you're doing." As they walked back to the stand, Elliot felt a sense of satisfaction. He had made a difference, even if it was a small one. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. A week later, as the lemonade stand was back in business, Elliot noticed something unusual. A group of men had been hanging around the neighborhood, watching Marcus and Noah closely. They lingered at the corner of the street, their eyes sharp and calculating, their presence casting a shadow over the otherwise cheerful atmosphere. Elliot's instincts kicked in. He had spent decades in the business world, and he knew when something wasn't right. He waited until the end of the day, when the last customer had left and Noah was busy packing up the stand, to approach Marcus. "Marcus," Elliot began cautiously, "I've noticed those men around here lately. Do you know who they are?" Marcus froze, his hands gripping the edge of the table. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, with a heavy sigh, he sat down on the curb, his shoulders slumping under an invisible weight. "They're loan sharks," Marcus confessed, his voice trembling. I borrowed money from them a few months ago to pay for Noah's school fees. I thought I could pay it back quickly, but things didn't go as planned. Now they're demanding double the amount, and if I don't pay them back soon, they'll take everything." Elliot's heart sank. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw the fear in his eyes, the way his hands shook as he ran them through his hair. He thought about Noah, so full of hope and dreams, and how all of that could be shattered in an instant. "How much do you owe?" Elliot asked quietly. Marcus hesitated, then whispered, $10,000. The number hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For Elliot, it was a drop in the bucket. But for Marcus, it was an insurmountable mountain. Elliot placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone in this, Marcus." Marcus looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and shame. "I don't want to drag you into this, Eli. This is my mess. I'll find a way to fix it." Elliot shook his head. Sometimes, fixing things doesn't mean doing it alone. Sometimes, it means letting someone else help carry the load. That evening, Elliot invited Marcus and Noah to his penthouse. He had debated whether to reveal his true identity, but he knew it was time. As they stepped into the luxurious apartment, Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. "Eli, what is this place?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elliot took a deep breath. "Marcus, there's something I need to tell you. My name isn't Eli. It's Elliot Harper. I'm the founder of Harper Innovations." Marcus stared at him, his face pale. You're Elliot Harper? The billionaire?" Elliot nodded. "Yes. I've been coming to your stand because I wanted to understand what life is like for people who don't have the privileges I do. I wanted to feel what it's like to struggle, to fight for survival. And in doing so, I've learned more from you and Noah than I ever could have imagined." Marcus sank into a chair, his mind racing. "I don't know what to say. I feel embarrassed. I've been pouring my heart out to you, and all this time, you could have just written a check and fixed everything." Elliot knelt in front of Marcus, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Marcus, I didn't want to fix things with money. I wanted to understand. I wanted to connect. And now that I do, I want to help, not out of pity, but because you've shown me what true strength looks like." Marcus looked at him, tears welling up in his eyes. "I don't want your pity, Elliot. I just want a fair chance." Elliot nodded. "And that's exactly what I'm going to give you." The next day, Elliot arranged a meeting with the loan sharks. Using his influence, he negotiated a settlement that wiped out Marcus's debt. He also offered to fund Marcus's dream of opening a grocery store, on one condition, that Marcus would pay it forward by helping others in need. As they shook hands on the deal, Marcus looked at Elliot, his voice filled with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. You've given me more than just a second chance. You've given me hope." Elliot smiled. "Hope is the most powerful thing in the world, Marcus. And you've given me just as much as I've given you." Months later, Marcus's grocery store, aptly named Reed's Fresh Market, was up and running. The grand opening was a community event, with balloons, music, and a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The store was modest but bright, with neatly stacked shelves of fresh produce, pantry staples, and even a small section for homemade goods from local vendors. Marcus stood at the entrance, greeting customers with a smile that reached his eyes for the first time in years. Noah was by his side, proudly wearing a small apron with the store's logo. The boy had been instrumental in setting up the store, helping his father stock shelves, and even suggesting they add a kids' corner, where children could pick out a free piece of fruit. Elliot arrived early that morning, blending in with the crowd. He wore the same plaid shirt and jeans he had worn on his first visit to the lemonade stand, a reminder of how far they had all come. When Marcus saw him, he rushed over and pulled him into a tight hug. "Elliot, I don't know how to thank you," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. This is everything I've ever dreamed of." Elliot smiled, patting Marcus on the back. "This is all you, Marcus. I just gave you a little push. You're the one who did the hard work." As the day went on, the store buzzed with activity. Neighbors chatted in the aisles, kids laughed in the kids' corner, and Marcus moved through the crowd, shaking hands and thanking everyone for their support. Elliot watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. Noah, inspired by Elliot's kindness and his own love for science, had started a small science club at his school. He called it Future Innovators, and it quickly became a hit among his classmates. Every week, Noah would lead experiments, from building simple machines to growing plants in recycled containers. One afternoon, Elliot visited the club as a special guest. He sat at the back of the classroom, watching as Noah explained the concept of renewable energy to a group of wide-eyed kids. If we can harness the power of the sun and wind, Noah said, holding up a small solar panel, we can create energy that doesn't hurt the planet. And who knows? Maybe one of us will invent something that changes the world. After the session, Noah ran up to Elliot, his face glowing with excitement. Did you see that, Mr. Eli? They were so interested. I think some of them might become scientists, too. Elliot ruffled Noah's hair, his heart full. You're already changing the world, Noah. Keep dreaming big, and there's no limit to what you can achieve. For Elliot, the journey had been transformative. He had started out searching for meaning, and in Marcus and Noah he had found it. He continued to visit them regularly, not as a billionaire, but as a friend. They would sit on the steps of the grocery store after closing time, sharing stories and laughter. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Marcus turned to Elliot. I used to think that success was about having money, a big house, a fancy car. But now I realize it's about making a difference. It's about helping others and leaving the world a little better than you found it. Elliot nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I used to think the same way. But you and Noah have shown me that true success is about connection, about love, about giving without expecting anything in return. Marcus smiled. You've given us so much, Elliot. Not just the store or the help with the loan sharks, but your time, your friendship. That's something we'll never forget. Elliot looked at Marcus, his eyes shining with gratitude. And you've given me something I've been searching for my whole life, a sense of purpose. For that, I'll always be thankful. As the months turned into years, Reed's Fresh Market became a cornerstone of the community. It wasn't just a grocery store, it was a place where people came together, where stories were shared, and where hope was rekindled. Marcus hired single parents and struggling individuals, giving them the same chance Elliot had given him. Noah's science club grew, inspiring a new generation of thinkers and dreamers. And Elliot, though he still ran his company, dedicated more of his time to philanthropy, focusing on projects that empowered communities and created opportunities for those in need. One day, as Elliot stood outside the grocery store, watching Marcus help an elderly customer carry her bags to her car and Noah explain the benefits of composting to a group of kids, he felt a deep sense of peace. This was what life was all about, not the money, not the fame, but the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the legacy we leave behind. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.